Hello everyone. Well, today I'm going to be creating the logos that I've drawn on paper, and I'll be recreating them inside of the computer. And I'll be using Illustrator to do that, and I'll basically be taking you through from the very beginning through to drawing the logos, and then probably at the end we will start to look at some colors. So let's get started. Pull up a new document, and we can just make this letter size. Since we're just doing a logo, that'd be fine. Okay, I gotta resize this window here so it'll all fit in the screen. And you'll be able to see everything. Okay. Now, what I've done earlier is scan in the page that I drew on. So I'm going to go off screen here and select place. And I'm going to go here. And I'm going to pick the scan. And I'm going to place it. Okay. Now this is my layers palette, and I have one layer on here, and I've just placed this scan on that layer. So I'm going to draw on top of it, so I'm going to add some layers here. I'm going to lock this layer so I can't edit it and just draw on top of it. Then I'm going to select my pen tool, and let's start with this one here. We're going to zoom in. And even though this is very rough, it's going to give us a general approximation of the shape that we wanted, and then we can work from there and start to really modify it. So first, let's get our ellipse tool instead of our pen tool. And we're going to draw a circle. And this changes it to a solid fill and the color of the outline. And we really just want the outline. We don't want it to be filled with anything. So we have this box here that has a red line. We'll click that. And now our shape is filled with nothing. And then I'm going to hold the Option key down. And I'm going to drag a copy of it over here. Like that. Now the only thing we need to do is connect these two shapes. And this is actually part of a larger circle. So let's see if we can approximate that size of circle. Like that. Now we don't need the rest of that. So the pen tool, we can add some points, and then we'll just delete these points that we don't need. So we have one, and we have a tool here, which is the reflect tool. And we're going to reflect it horizontally and make a copy. And rotate it and put it into place. So you can see we're starting to get the shape together. Just kind of generally building it out of smaller shapes. And this video is not made to be a tutorial per se. A lot of the tools that I'm switching to, I'm using the keyboard for like the pen tool and the rectangle tool and the selection tool. I'm just hitting keys on my keyboard. So that's how I'm switching back and forth between these different tools in case you're trying to follow along. Although I don't know if that would be very relaxing. So I'm going to focus on the relaxing part rather than the tutorial part of this. So now I'm going to get a straight line here. And I'm going to rotate this around because right now this is kind of on a slant. That way as we work with it, it will be even. Okay, let's zoom in a little bit more. Just a very small adjustment. There we go. So now the top of our circles are aligned with this ruler line. Okay. And I think I'm going to delete these because now this whole thing is skewed. I don't want that. I think I'm going to try a different way. I'm just going to put a point here. I'm going to drag a point out here. And I'm going to put another point here. I think that's a lot closer to what we actually want to do. Yeah, I like that better. And with a lot of these programs, there is no one way to do it. There's usually several ways to do something. So let's hide this. We can kind of take a look at what we're making here. Let's do the reflect tool again. Drop that down just a little bit. We're going to take snap to point off because we don't want it snapping to points and jumping around. We want to be able to move it in very small increments. Okay. So there is the beginning of our logo. One of the most important things to do when working with artwork on the computer is to zoom in tightly and make sure all the details of how your shapes fit together work. See, I have this little bitty notch here. I want to see if I can get rid of that as much as possible. Like that. So that's a smooth transition. Perfect. Now, let's move this another ruler line so it intersects this point. And we can come over here and know that we want this to be exactly in the same position. And then move that like that. So that this line coming up here flows smoothly right into this circle. Okay. And let's do the reflect tool thing again. Except this time, I'm going to make sure I get it right in the middle. So I've used another ruler line, lining it with this point on the circle. And now when I reflect, I'm going to put it right here. And that didn't work, did it? That's interesting. It's okay. I don't know why that didn't work. Okay. Close enough. It didn't work because that's not right in the middle. It looks good though. So now we're going to join these two shapes together. Or these two lines, and make one shape. Now I want to pull up this palette, and I'm going to select all of these shapes, and this is going to combine them all into one big shape, like that. I'm going to undo that for a second. When I created this part, it made this loop out. Which is not what I wanted. I want that to be a smooth transition. Like that. Same thing on this side. Okay. And I know this is a lot of detail work, but the details are what make a good logo. Paying attention to them. Now let's try it again. Boom. So now you see we have a nice smooth shape all the way around. Which is pretty similar to what we had drawn. Now, let's go back to our ellipse tool. And I think what happened was that when I rotated those circles, it moved these points off. Because these should be right across from each other. And they're not. That's why my reflect tool didn't work. And that's okay. Let's move this up here. And let's move this right here. Be kind of the apex of each part of this circle. Let's get rid of these. We don't need them. We basically want to find kind of the center area of this circle. We're going to draw a larger circle. And we're going to draw another one. And let's do a third one, although we may only use two. And I've slightly increased the spacing here. Just subtly, so that they get further and further away. And now what I want to do is, using that same point, I want to draw an angle. Now I know I'm not going to use this part of the circles, so I can get rid of those. And since I want this angle to be the same as this angle, I will use the reflect tool again. There. Now I know that those are equal. The question is, do I want more or less of these sound waves showing? Let's go like that. See how that looks. So let's zoom in. Now we're going to add points to these semicircles right in the middle of this line so they follow it. And do the same thing here. Okay. We can, I don't want to delete those yet, but let's delete this part. And we'll delete this part last. Find the middle of the whole shape. Reflect one more time. This time vertically. I don't know if I like that. I may want these to be a little bigger. So I'm going to undo my steps. Bring back my guides. And this is why I love working on the computer, because nothing is permanent. You can go back and try something else. So, add some points. Delete these. And then reflect. Okay. Now what will it look like with just two? Much better. Now the other thing we can do with these lines is we can go here to our stroke palette, show options, and we can control how the very end caps of these lines look. And we can make them rounded. Which is what we want to do. Give it a little bit more of a soft appearance. Turn our drawing back on. Okay. Again, it's a good start. We will definitely be editing it from here. But let's name this layer Shapes. Let's name this layer text. Because the next thing we want to do is add in the text to our logo. And right now we're just using the default font, which comes up here in Illustrator. We can pick a different font to be sure. I want something that's going to be kind of friendly. Let's center this. Use our guide again to make sure it's in the middle. And we're probably going to want to spread this out. So we're going to use our letter spacing tool here. Okay, and it's close enough for now. We will refine this once we actually pick a font and everything. We will not be using Comic Sans. Nope. Not very good for that. And unless you really have a font in your head that you exactly want to use, most of the time you have just a general idea of the type of font you want. And then you go through different variations of that until you find one that works really well. And sometimes you surprise yourself and hit upon a font that works well that you weren't expecting. So these have serifs on them, you can see here, and I'm really looking for a sans serif font. Now there's a possibility. That has some nice character to it. Let's see what it looks like when it's bold. Spread the letter spacing out a bit. That's a little too funky. There we go. That's a possibility. It's a nice rounded shape, but it has a attention-getting look to it. I don't know if I like this R though or not, but we'll see. Okay. Well, I think that's a good start with this. We're in the ballpark. We have some stuff to work with, and it's in the computer. So the next one we're going to work on is up here, and it's this one. Now this one I don't have to necessarily draw exactly like this because it's a fairly simple shape. We need to get our rounded rectangle tool. Okay. And these rounded edges are way too big. So I need to bring them back. Let's see, okay. Yeah, that's pretty good. get back to just our black outline. I'll tell you what, I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to change this again to make it smaller. There we go. That's better. So this design is basically just 4 squares. And we've accidentally drawn this on our text layer. So we're going to cut this and put it back on our shapes layer and paste it in. There we go. Now on our text layer, we can do A, S, M, R, and bits. And we'll do the same thing down here with this one. Bits. Okay. Again, these are not the final shape that these logos are going to be in, but it gives us a working spot to go from. And since it is very important to always save your work, we're going to do that. ASMR logos. Save. Okay. Now if the whole thing blows up, we've at least saved our work. Okay, so here we are with our basic components for what is going to be our logos. The next thing we want to do is start to play around with some colors that are going to be associated with these logos. And then we'll have basically all of our building blocks in place for the next video, when we'll actually start to really play with the ideas of these shapes and actually start to create the final logo. So what I usually like to do is just create some squares here. And work with the colors from there. And I kind of have an idea of what colors I want for this, and an idea of what colors I want for this. This is going to have a much more simple color palette, I think, than this is. But let's focus on this for right now. Now, the original logo that I use, if you can call it that, it's pretty basic. Let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, here we go. That's huge. So let's shrink this down. So these are the original colors I used to create this icon type thing. And what I can do is grab my eyedropper tool and just click on each one of these colors and bring it in. I even click here on this one. Okay. So now we don't need that anymore. Now I really like these colors. They come from a photo shoot that I did. I found an old abandoned building, and inside were office buildings that hadn't been used since, I believe, the 40s. And there was an entire room filled with manila folders, or file folders. And they were just heaped up against the wall in this huge cascade of paperwork. And the file folders had all these different colors. And I took pictures of them and brought them back and processed them. And just the color combination was so amazing that I really just fell in love with it. And that's one of the reasons I used it for my initial logo. So this is kind of what I'm thinking to use for this one. So that one's pretty basic. And we can see over here the actual color values will change when we click on each color. These values here will change. Now this, you see, it says C, M, Y, and K. That stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. But because I'm not going to be using this logo in a print piece, say like a newspaper or a brochure, I don't need to use the CMYK color palette. I want to use the RGB color palette. So I'll select that. And that stands for red, green, and blue. And these are the three colors that you use when you're creating artwork that's going to be seen on a computer screen or a TV. So that's why I switched to that, because this logo is going to be primarily on my channel and primarily on just the internet. So I don't have to worry about CMYK. I can stick with RGB. So now let's go over here and look at some colors for this logo. For this logo, I want to use some basic blues. So we want very little red, very little green, and a lot of blue. Now that's a pretty much pure saturation right there. And another thing we want to do is, you see here that this actual document is also CMYK, which means that this blue is not as bright as it could be. So I'm going to go off screen here, and I'm going to change the document color mode to RGB. Now you see when I did that, it changed the values. So I can change these again, and now you're going to see this blue is going to become very intense and bright. That's pretty much 100% blue on your screen. And I don't know that I want to use that bright of blue, but we're going to use that to start with. And then let's make this a blue that's not quite as bright. Let's darken it up quite a bit. Something like that. We're going to change the size of these so they'll fit on the screen better. Now, one of the other tools here is this one, which will blend two shapes together. And in this case, the shape is going to stay the same, but the color is going to change. So I click on a corner here, and I click on a corner here, and it creates a blend between these two colors. Now I don't want this smooth of a blend, so I'm going to double click here. Instead of smooth color, I'm going to say specified steps. And I don't want 134 of them, I only want, let's say, 10. Preview that. Okay. Let's go with 5. So now I have a blend of these colors. And I want to expand these, so I'm going to go off screen, click expand, and they're now each a separate object. I'm also going to ungroup them. So now, let's take this middle color, and this time, let's add some green to it. Let's see what we get. I want to make like an aqua color. Yeah, something like that. Now we can do the same thing and blend it down this way. Let's pull that out like that. Expand, ungroup. So now we can start to see some different possibilities with the colors. Let's make this one quite green. And see where we go with that. Ungroup. Okay. So instead of just sitting here and fiddling with these colors back and forth, I usually go this way and just start to explore the color palette around a specific kind of color that I want. And oftentimes this will give me a better idea for colors than I would have had if I was just trying to pick them out of thin air. So let's pick, let's see, I like that color. I like this one. And I like that one. Yeah, let's see, let's also pick this one and this one. And this one. Get rid of these. Let's align these so they're all kind of even. Okay. So this is kind of a purplish color. This is a teal green, and this is like a light blue. Now what I want to do, in fact, let's just do this with all three of them. I want to make all of these white. Oops, I don't want to spin it. There we go. Nope. There we go. I had the other one selected too. keep making the same mistake, don't I? Okay. Let's save the work I've done so far. We're going to select all of these, expand, and ungroup them. Okay. So now we have some basic colors to start to work with for this. Very cool colors, very calming colors. I may not stick exactly with these, but again, this at least gets me in the ballpark of where I want to be. So 2 very different logos, 2 very different color schemes. This one has the advantage of having some continuity with the branding that I'm currently using. However little that branding is, it's still there. So I like the fact that there would be basically a variation on what I'm doing now. But I also like this one in the fact that it has a little bit more of a dynamic shape. It's not quite as boring. And it has a much more calming, relaxing color scheme. So these are not the final logos, but these are the building blocks from which the logo is going to come. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Again, not really a tutorial on Illustrator, but just showing the process that I use to work with shapes and text and colors in Illustrator. Next time, we will, I'll probably take one of these logos for each video and explore it and work with it and start to play with the shapes and the colors as well. Okay? Well, I hope you've enjoyed this. Please subscribe to my channel, and you can also subscribe to me on Twitter, or follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is ASMRvids, the same as my YouTube name. And I will keep you up to date on that Twitter channel with things I'm working on. So again, thank you, and I will see you later. Bye.